This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight's Baltimore bridge crash. A major bridge collapse in the U.S. has officials in Halifax looking at what lessons can be learned from the tragedy.
Getting ready. These firefighters prepare for wildfire season in Nova Scotia.
And brown water. Dartmouth residents voice concerns about the impact a construction site is having on a nearby lake.
Periods of rain tonight with lingering showers and drizzle, but temperatures rising for Wednesday. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. We begin south of the border in Baltimore, where a major highway bridge collapsed early this morning after it was hit by a container ship.
Divers are now searching for 6 people. Officials say 2 others were pulled alive from the dangerously cold waters. This is harrowing video showing the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge just before 1:30 a.m. Eastern. You can see how quickly the structure collapses into the river below. Officials say it appears to have been a terrible accident and not related to terrorism.
The crew on the ship issued a mayday call before it collided, allowing authorities to limit vehicle traffic. The 6 people unaccounted for were part of a construction crew filling potholes. Officials say they do not think anyone is trapped in submerged vehicles. We will have more on this developing story a little later in the program.
Meanwhile, Halifax Harbor Bridges and the Port of Halifax are both watching what's happening in Baltimore today. They want to see if any lessons can be learned from the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge.
As Gareth Hampshire tells us, the chance of that happening has already been flagged in the Halifax Harbor, and prevention measures are in place.
100,000 vehicles drive over the Halifax Harbor bridges every day, with container ships passing underneath every day and night. None have ever collided with the bridges, but that type of incident has been identified as a risk.
We have our bridge patrol is physically on the bridge with every single cargo ship that traverses under the bridge. They watch it. We're in constant communication with the port and the cargo ship.
The bridge can be shut down quickly, he says, and there are planning exercises that happen often to prepare. One ship did lose power approaching the harbor within the last couple of years, something being reported as a possibility in Baltimore, but there was a quick response in Halifax.
Everybody was put on alert. We did not shut down the bridge because it was at a distance at this point, and then power was regained. But it did show that the systems actually worked because everybody was notified, everybody was ready.
Rock islands have also been built around the bridge piers for extra protection as a result of a report from 1979.
When the bridges were built originally, they did not have those stone islands, and they were added later on, and the intention was that a ship would strike that and would then run aground and stop before it actually made contact with the bridge.
This shipping enthusiast has been taking photos and writing about the harbor since the 1960s.
In Halifax, if a ship loses power, there is a protocol. There's a pilot on board. Ships anywhere near the bridges generally have a tug, at least one tug in attendance, that can divert the course of the ship or slow it down.
The mayor is confident the correct measures are in place, but his office has been in contact with the port and Halifax Harbor Bridges today.
As a city, as you say, a port city with 2 bridges that we rely on, it certainly makes you think, but I'm pretty sure that we're in pretty good shape and have done a lot of work to make sure that something like that couldn't happen here.
The Halifax Port Authority says it has comprehensive safety and mitigation plans in place with regular training and testing, but will review any investigation into the Baltimore bridge collapse in case there are any lessons to be learned. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
It has been just over a year since the release of the final report into the events of April 2020, when a gunman on a rampage killed 22 people in the span of just 13 hours. Now the RCMP is preparing to provide an update on what has changed since that April weekend and since that final report. Blair Rhodes has more.
The RCMP has come in for a lot of criticism for how it handled things that weekend, particularly how it communicated with the public and the scale and direction of the initial emergency response. There was one tweet late on the evening of April 18th, and nothing more until the following morning, and no mention of the fact this was an active shooter situation.
I believe there was an Amber Alert that went out at some point. No, we just used the Twitter and Facebook just because it was unfolding.
Since then, RCMP have adopted and made frequent use of the Alert Ready system, which sends warnings directly to cell phones and broadcasters, alerting for everything from fires and floods to active police operations. RCMP have also improved radio communications, which was limited the night of April 18th, when only 3 officers were sent into Portapique on foot as part of the initial police response to the shootings. Mounties have improved training for frontline officers in the area of critical incidents. The Mass Casualty Commission found there was confusion and lack of coordination. The Mounties have created a new unit within the force, specifically assigned to deal with issues it describes as reform, accountability, and culture, all arising out of the Mass Casualty Commission report. One of the biggest issues still to be addressed is training. The MCC made clear that the current months-long training regime at the depot facility in Saskatchewan is inadequate. The commissioners recommended it be replaced with a full university program. But because this represents a fundamental change in how the Mounties do things now and how they've done them for generations, the deadline for making such changes isn't until 2032. So the RCMP have a long list of topics to draw from as they discuss the changes they've made and the changes yet to come. Blair Rhodes, CBC News, Halifax.
A suspicious death we told you about yesterday in Dartmouth has now been declared a homicide. Police were called to a disturbance in an apartment building on Pinecrest Drive just after 7 a.m. Monday morning. Once inside, officers found a man who was deceased. A 47-year-old man who was known to the deceased man was arrested at the scene. He was later released without any charges. The investigation is continuing.
Closing arguments were heard today in the Colin Tweety retrial. Tweety is on trial for a second time for charges related to the hit-and-run death of a 10-year-old girl in Cape Breton. Aaron Potty reports.
Outside a Sydney courthouse are memories of Talia Forrest. Family members are remembering her after her death 4.5 years ago. The 10-year-old was riding her bicycle one evening on Blackrock Road in Victoria County when she was struck and killed.
It's been really hard. We miss her so much. She's missed terribly. The whole community misses her. There's a lot of people that miss her dearly.
Colin Tweety was driving the SUV that collided with Forrest. Tweety has already faced one trial on charges, including impaired driving causing death. He was acquitted, but the Crown appealed and won, ordering a new trial. On Tuesday, a defense lawyer argued it was dark and that Tweety did not see Forrest. He says Tweety kept driving as he thought he had struck a deer.
There's 2 charges that are similar, and they involve laying some kind of blame, some kind of criminal blame on the part of Mr. Tweety for the death of Talia. And I think we've gone through the evidence now, and just like the last trial, I think it'll be up to the court, but it is our submission that there wasn't any evidence, not enough evidence to cause that.
The Crown closed its case saying that Tweety's blood alcohol level was what caused the crash, and that rather than a belief, Tweety had wished or hoped he had hit a deer.
The Crown takes the position that we had met each of the specific tests for each of the specific charges, and we submit that we proved the cases, all 3 charges beyond a reasonable doubt.
Forrest's cousin has been bringing a teddy bear to the courtroom. It was made from a pair of pajamas owned by Forrest. Halen Williams says the bear brings them comfort and good memories. A judge is expected to make a decision in Tweety's case in mid-May. Aaron Potty, CBC News, Sydney.
A change included in an omnibus bill that amends 15 provincial acts, including the Personal Health Information Act, would give the health minister greater access to personal medical information. She says it's to, in her words, manage the health system. But several critics, including 2 doctors' organizations, say there needs to be more safeguards on personal privacy. Carrie Smith is a survivor of sexual assault who says her privacy was breached.
That could have a serious detrimental impact to other would-be sex assault survivors coming forward. We're being told that we need to trust the system, that trust needs to be earned, and that trust needs to stay intact.
I'll talk to Carrie Smith about the potential impacts of changing access to data around personal medical information. That's our Newsmaker interview just after 6:30.
Nova Scotia's Natural Resources Minister says an interim report on offshore wind development in the province shows that the independent committee is listening to public feedback. The report recommends no development within 25 kilometers of the coast and proposes 6 potential development areas that warrant further consideration. Those areas were picked in part based on feedback from the fishing industry, public, Indigenous communities, and industry. Tori Rushton says it shows the process is working.
It's putting to rest some of the concerns that industries do have with what is taking place, and I've certainly heard personally from some of the fishers that now understand the process we put out, that they are going to have a voice in determining things. They are going to have a process where they could have hands-on with some of these projects. So there's some encouraging comments that we are getting back.
The report says it could be 7 to 10 years before an offshore wind farm is operating in Nova Scotia. Rushton says he hopes to issue the first call for development bids next year.
Ryan Snoddon with us now, and just a short while ago, it was really spilling rain outside our studio windows here in Halifax.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're in for a wet stretch.
We certainly are. Yep. The umbrella is going to be your friend between now and the weekend. That is for certain, especially tonight. Periods of rain coming down, and yeah, still spilling buckets right now in through the Halifax area, down towards Lunenburg, most of the province into the mix. Just northern Cape Breton right now, kind of on the outside looking in, and down towards the Yarmouth area, at least some showers there with some steadier rains just off to the east. But yeah, that area of high pressure is fading away. This is the first low that's backing in, secondary low, and you can see this stream of moisture here. That is really what is setting up for the later stages of this week. So tonight, periods of rain. And then we'll be watching for tomorrow morning, lingering lighter rain with drizzle, but not nearly as damp as it is out there this evening. Wednesday, throughout the day, we're going to continue to see these periods of light rain with drizzle and fog patches with those southeasterly winds. Temperatures on the rise, though, with those southeast winds will range from around 7-8 degrees along that Atlantic coastline, but including in through the Cape Breton area, will be more like 5, 6, 7 degrees there, though some pockets in 7 to 8 degree for Inverness area. And then you can see inland will be into the double digits for tomorrow. So certainly noticing that warm up. That milder air will stick around for Thursday with this increasingly southerly flow, things turning a little breezier for Thursday as well. And then you can see these darker greens coming in here for not only Thursday, but especially Friday. And that will continue into the early stages of the weekend as that low tracks through. Looking at some widespread amounts, over 50 millimeters by the time we get to Saturday. We'll break that down in full detail with your 7-day forecast coming up. Tom and Amy.
That's a soaker. Okay, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, volunteer firefighters are going through physical testing throughout Nova Scotia this week to get ready to respond to any wildfires if they're needed. The tests are taking place now, so the province has a reserve team in place ready to go should there be any kind of repeat of what happened last year. Gareth Hampshire reports.
Aris Santos is being fitted out with a 25-pound pack ready for the test. He and the others taking part have to carry the pack around the track at the East Hants Sportsplex for about 3 kilometers, or just over 9 laps, in under 30 minutes. He works as a sous chef and volunteers as a firefighter.
To help my community just in case they need some help.
Santos saw the need for extra firefighters when responding to the Tantalum fire last year. So he's making sure he's doing the testing early to be ready again if he's called upon this year.
I'm always stick to my goal to become a firefighter because I love to help people.
Taking the test alongside him is Dave Keeping. He saw the smoke from the Tantalum fire, but had only just moved to Nova Scotia from Saskatchewan, so was not able to help fight the fire.
Ever since then, I have some experience with wildland fire, so that's why I'm here. I can help out.
He's a former supervisor with Saskatchewan's wildfire management team.
And my heart just went out to them and bled for them, and I felt completely useless sitting there, unable to help.
Last year was the first year for the Volunteer Firefighter Reserve when people offered to help after the wildfire started. So this year, the department's running tests earlier to be ready.
It turned out to be a really good thing, and so we want to carry it forward, and that's what we're doing here today, is doing that fitness testing and just getting ready for the season.
The packs are meant to represent what it's like when carrying equipment and moving quickly on the fire line.
They're carrying things like chainsaws, gas jugs, pumps, portable pumps. So there's lots of heavy equipment and hardware they're going to be carrying around. So there's a reason why there's a fitness test.
More than 100 people have signed up to take the exam throughout the province as it gets closer to the finish. Santos is keeping up his pace.
Feeling good, Jared. Feeling good.
He and the others are all told they've passed today. He's happy he's made it and ready again to join the firefighting effort on his days off, but would be even happier if he's not needed and there are no wildfires this season. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, East Hants.
A number of Nova Scotia mental health clinicians are concerned about a provincial pilot program meant to help address the growing wait list for autism and ADHD testing. Last September, the provincial government announced it would pay some private practice psychologists to perform the assessments. One of their concerns is pay disparity. The province pays about $750 to public psychologists, but up to a maximum of $4,000 to private ones. They say this could push more public psychologists into the private sector. Mental Health Minister Brian Comer says he takes the concerns of frontline health professionals seriously. But so far, the pilot is working.
There's been over 30 diagnostic assessments. There's been 25 assessments for ADHD. So that's in a 2.5-month span. So if you scale that up, over the course of a 12-month period, I mean, you're talking over an additional, 100 tests that wouldn't have been performed otherwise. So certainly we have more work to do, but like this is a pilot, so we're certainly learning from the clinicians, talking to families. But I would say these are 30 plus tests that wouldn't have been conducted otherwise that are really helping families that need those diagnostic assessments.
Comer's office also disputed claims about there being a disparity in the scope of the assessments between the private and public practices. There are currently 1,600 names on the wait list for autism testing.
Halifax has kicked off the planning process for a new neighborhood in the North End. Today, Regional Council agreed to move ahead with the Strawberry Hill Future Growth Plan. It includes the area around Strawberry Hills Street between Windsor Street and Kemptic Road. Now, a group of local landowners hopes to build 14 multi-unit buildings ranging between 8 and 42 stories. That would create 3,500 housing units. John Lindsay is one of those property owners.
We want to do what's going to be the best for the property and for the city and for the folks that are going to live there. Like, this is an opportunity to create a whole virtually small village where, thousands of people are in a location that is both on the peninsula, but easy access out on the Bedford Highway, easy access to the bridge, and accessible by transit.
Lindsay says now is a good time to begin the development process because the proposed Housing Accelerator Fund changes that would allow higher buildings in the area. There will be consultations for the public to weigh in on the development over the coming years.
Some recent heavy rains have triggered lots of sediment erosion from a construction site in Dartmouth.
It's causing the water in one lake to drastically change color, and people who live nearby are concerned. The CBC's Paul Palmer has that story for us tonight.
This was the scene after a recent heavy rainfall in Dartmouth. Very brown water was running through a brook that was feeding into Russell Lake. Residents who live nearby reported the incident, which has turned the lake water brown. An investigation showed it was sediment that came from this worksite that traveled through stormwater drains.
Dartmouth, the city of lakes, those lakes are kind of the hub of our communities, and I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find people that have grown up in Dartmouth that didn't, swim, fish, skate, hang out at a beach.
A large residential building will be built on this parcel of land next to Highway 111. Excavation work made for very muddy conditions and the heavy rains caused rainwater and sediment to spill through and over measures that were in place to prevent that from happening. With another rainstorm coming later this week, the company doing the work has been ordered to focus their efforts on getting the site better prepared to handle a heavy rainfall.
We're trying to mitigate the water right now. Water and mud seems to be traveling everywhere, so we're doing our best efforts to make sure it doesn't happen anymore.
Pinnacle has put several large tarps down and are putting more in place in an effort to control where the rainfall goes. They've built 2 of these small ponds to try and contain the excess water so it will drain slower and cleaner into the stormwater systems below. Once the site is dug down, there shouldn't be any more concerns around where the water will go.
Once the building itself is in, then there's a drainage plan that connects to everything, and it'll actually flow through clear rock. So most of everything you see get excavated out of here won't be used again.
How the lake will rebound remains to be seen, but people who live near it would like to see a few things done, including stronger enforcement of site plans from the municipality and Environment Department around large development sites.
One is a kind of a lack of enforcement and kind of meaningful laws and regulations that are effective in preventing the problem and motivating contractors to do a better job on their sites in terms of keeping the sediment on the sites.
Paul Pometer, CBC News, Dartmouth.
Time now for our first commercial break.
Please stay with us. There is a lot more to come on CBC Nova Scotia News. More details about the bridge collapse in Baltimore as divers continue their search for several people.
And police and SWAT gear have raided 2 properties belonging to music mogul Sean Diddy Combs as part of an ongoing sex trafficking investigation by federal authorities.
Yep, kind of a gray day on the Northwest Arm. Ryan is up next with this full weather forecast. We're back after this.
Yeah, soggy. Maybe it's
waterlogged soon.
Grass growing weather eventually somewhere down the line.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's, you know, by the time, I mean, it's already wet, but by the time we get to the end of this week, we're going to be just living in a bog, it feels like, as you can feel when you're walking across the lawn. It just squish. Yeah. Not pouring rain right now everywhere. And in fact, as we look at our Nova Scotia webcams, beautiful shot here from Highland Lakes.
Oh, and still
Lovely.
snow.
Yeah.
And still some snow on the ground, which my guess is by the end of this week will likely be gone.
Washed away.
Washed away indeed. You can see, overcast there, but not completely pouring rain, which it is right now in many parts of the province, especially along that Atlantic coastline. Just 1 degree though. In Ingonish, and as we look at those temperatures, it's 1 across most of Cape Breton, though 4 in Cheticamp with a nice downsloping wind there coming in off the Highlands, 2 in Halifax, and yes, indeed, as we look at the winds, those have been will be a big story as we move through the next couple of days. Still a mainly easterly component to the wind right now, but shifting to southeast through tonight and then southerly as we move throughout tomorrow night into Thursday. And you can see sustained right now near 30 in Yarmouth, not far from that in Lunenburg, 17 at Halifax, Beaver Island, 54 gusting to 65 there along that eastern shore. And you can see those gusts upwards of 50 in through Yarmouth. So there's that heavier rain right now, Lunenburg County, Halifax up into the Truro region now, Pictou and Ingonish counties, and starting to edge up into you folks in Inverness County and certainly Victoria County. Temperatures, again, close enough to the freezing mark here that we could see some patchy freezing rain over the next couple of hours, but those temperatures will further bump up overnight tonight, and that will be less of a concern moving forward. So this is the low, really, that's going to be the big heavy rain producer as it draws up that moisture from the south, and so we'll be timing that out for you here in just a moment. Temperatures tonight will be indeed lows near the freezing mark for Cape Breton, so that risk for some patchy freezing rain for the next couple of hours. We'll walk you through your hour by hour here in a moment. 2 to 6 degrees across the rest of the mainland. And so, for tonight, we will be looking at those temperatures for the most part in the 1 to 2 range for Cape Breton. So I think that risk of patchy freezing rain for the most part is this evening. Slight risk for the Highlands, as you can see, even into tomorrow morning. So just be mindful of that. Most of us starting in the 4, 5, 6, even 7 and 8 degree range for the Tri-County area tomorrow. Walking you through your timeline here, and you can see for tomorrow, most of that green is now pushed off to the north. We are still looking at some periods of lighter rain, and drizzle and fog patches are certainly going to be in the mix, but not nearly as damp as it is out there this evening. That's some good news, but definitely keep the umbrella handy for tomorrow. We're going to be watching temperatures 5 to 8 degrees across Cape Breton. Those winds southeast 20 gusting to 40, and fog patches in the mix here. Retreating back closer to the coastline by the time we get to midday. 11, 12 degrees for the Northumberland shore region. A little cooler, Antigonish and down into the Guysborough County area, but still, especially the town of Antigonish, likely near the double-digit mark. Looking at temperatures anywhere from 11 to 13 degrees for the Fundy Valley region tomorrow, maybe even cracking 14 degrees here. Not out of the question. Annapolis Royal and into Digby is our best chance for that. A little cooler in those onshore southerly winds for places like Shelburne and Liverpool tomorrow. Halifax right around 7 or 8 degrees tomorrow with, those fog patches retreating back to the coast. Milder for Thursday with a bit more of a southerly to even southwesterly flow. Better chance we're getting into some steadier rains, especially if you're close to the Bay of Fundy and up into the Amherst area, Colchester, Cumberland, watching the timeline of this, and you can see some of those darker greens starting to appear for Thursday, especially into the afternoon here, and then this will really fill in for Thursday night into Friday, as it looks like that rain will advance eastward, and by Friday we're looking at these heavier periods of rain that are going to be in the mix. Now, this is subject to change, a little bit of grain of salt, because we're running you through not only tonight, but tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and into Saturday. In fact, this is right through Saturday, supper time Saturday. But just to show you kind of the widespread 50 plus millimeters that are looking set for a good chunk of the Maritimes by the time we get through Saturday. Looks like that Bay of Fundy area, the kind of the western half of the province is the most likely to see those 50+ millimeter amounts, and in fact could see some pockets in here that push 100 millimeters, possibly even more than that. So we'll be drilling into that in more detail, obviously, in the coming days, but just a heads up, get those sump pumps ready, make sure that things are ready to go, because it is going to be wet, especially for Friday. We will taper off to some flurries as we move throughout the day on Saturday as the rain departs, and then the sunshine appears just for those Easter eggs on Sunday.
We will need it by then.
With the chocolate. Okay, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, up next, I'll talk with a sex assault survivor who is calling on the provincial government to do more to protect the privacy of medical data in Nova Scotia. That is our Newsmaker interview.
Stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News.
Critics of a bill that could change the Personal Health Information Act, allowing the health minister to access personal medical information, say it needs more safeguards to protect personal privacy. Two doctors' organizations are among the groups expressing concern. A survivor of sexual assault is also calling for the bill to be reconsidered. Carrie Smith is a sexual assault survivor who is speaking out against the bill. I'm wondering why you're speaking out about this.
Okay, so why I feel that it's so important for me to speak out against this bill is because of the broad scope that seems to be what the healthcare minister is suggesting, that she may have into specific details into healthcare records. I myself am a sexual assault survivor. I'm also someone who is struggling from the effects of having private healthcare information accessed, shared without my knowledge. Many of those details that were accessed in my health records were of the sexual assault nature, the side effects, the private conversations that I believed to be in confidence between myself and my healthcare practitioner. And it took many months for me to get to the point where I had enough courage to do that. I probably called 3 or 4 different times and canceled, and then eventually realized I can't do this on my own. I need help. And that is where the help is. Trained, trauma-informed healthcare professionals in the form of therapists, sometimes nurses. When you can't get into your therapist, you end up at the ER. Other times, psychiatrists that are helping you perhaps with medications to better help you survive the effects of the very painful trauma that comes after the assault. The recovery is most times just as painful, if not more life-changing than the injury itself when it's occurred. So when I found out, when I stumbled on the uncomfortable truth that the details of my events, the conversations that I entrusted with a healthcare professional were actually accessed by another custodian.
And you argue, obviously that trust is something you thought was there. And with this new bill, the minister says you can trust us. The government doesn't need access to individual information, but just wants that sort of aggregate data about how patients are using the healthcare system. What would you say to that?
I'm concerned about aggregate data. I'm not sure that I understand exactly, how far does that aggregate data go? To my understanding, over the last 24 hours, I did a quick Google search, and it looks as though it is a multitude of information, even the smallest of facts that could one day be part of this needed aggregate data to come together. Many times this information, it's of a huge, very valuable information. Of course it is. It's life-changing. It can save lives. It gives insight on how to treat patients for trauma, like myself. And a lot of those insights come from the patient. So we're still in an age where there's still a lot of stigma around sexual assault, and coming forward and talking about it, realizing that it's okay that for you not to be able to be strong enough to handle it on your own, that, you might need some guidance, a shoulder to cry on, coping skills afterwards. I myself, I'm recovering with PTSD, and I was ashamed of that. That is not a detail that I had planned sharing with anyone other than family members that I felt needed to know that I love, that are very close to me, as well as healthcare professionals. And should I have gotten to the point where I would willfully share that information, that should have been within my control.
And I know you're concerned, obviously, that in the future, with this bill, that kind of information might be more readily accessible to more people. Just before I leave you here, we only have a few 30 seconds left or so. What kind of impact do you think that would have on sex assault survivors coming forward, other sex assault survivors?
that could have a serious detrimental impact to other would-be sex assault survivors coming forward. We're being told that we need to trust the system. That trust needs to be earned, and that trust needs to stay intact. And I just want to be very clear before we go, my message is not to deter the public to come forward. If you need help and if you're in crisis, please call the numbers, come forward, reach out to a friend, reach out to me. I've been there, I've done that, and I survived. I didn't think that I would ever see the day that I would smile again or be here sharing in an attempt to save a life. And is 5 minutes enough? I hope so.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you taking the time today and telling a little bit of your story, Carrie Smith. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Coming up, the NBA is investigating a Toronto Raptors player over potential gambling on basketball games as similar scandals unfold in soccer and baseball.
As we told you earlier in the program, a container ship rammed into a bridge in Baltimore early this morning, snapping it and causing it to collapse.
6 people are now missing. The CBC's Katie Simpson has more on what happened and the investigation.
There is a very active search and rescue operation taking place just behind me. Here's what we can see of what's left of the Key Bridge after this horrific disaster that took place early this morning. Pieces of metal debris are jutting out of the water, and just beyond what's left of the bridge is the cargo ship in question. Authorities say it was just before 1:30 this morning when the cargo ship experienced some sort of power issue as it was trying to leave the Baltimore harbor. That's when it collided with a support beam of this bridge, causing it to collapse into the water below. At the time, there was a construction crew filling potholes on this bridge doing routine maintenance work. 8 members of that crew were thrown into the water. 2 have been rescued, but at this time, 6 remain missing. President Joe Biden offering his support to the families of those going through trauma in this moment, saying there's nothing to indicate this was intentional.
Everything so far indicates that this was a terrible accident. At this time, we have no other indication, no other reason to believe there's any intentional act here.
The National Transportation Safety Board is leading the investigation into this incident. At this point, there's nothing to indicate that there was any structural issue with the bridge. What investigators will be focusing on is the ship and the critical moments leading up to the incident.
That is part of our investigation, where we look at in depth at safety information, anything that may have occurred prior to this, any sort of safety history with respect to the vessel, any sort of maintenance that was done to the vessel or component on the ship. We will look at all of that.
The search and rescue operation is the priority at this point, so the investigation may get off to a bit of a slower start because officials with the NTSB do not want to get in the way of the officials who are leading that very urgent search for possible survivors. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Dundalk, Maryland.
Federal agents, including police in SWAT gear, raided 2 properties belonging to music mogul Sean Diddy Combs yesterday. It was part of an ongoing sex trafficking investigation by federal authorities in New York, according to American law enforcement officials. It's not clear whether Combs is the target of the investigation. Video shows what appears to be Homeland Security investigators at the property of a house in Los Angeles. There have been several sexual assault lawsuits filed against Combs in recent months.
Canada's family doctor shortage is a well-known story by now. More doctors leaving family practice and not enough entering it. The CBC's Christine Birak looks at what may be a big factor: cost.
It's a frustrating question millions of Canadians are asking. Why can't I find a family doctor? Well, some new data reveals nearly 30% of family docs have left their offices and moved into other parts of healthcare. So why did they leave, and where are they now? Based on billing information, the Canadian Institute for Health Information found nearly 10,000 family doctors were largely providing specialty care, many of them working in emergency medicine. Others shifted to psychiatry and general surgery. Family doctors essentially run small businesses that are now harder to afford. Rents, paperwork, IT, and staffing costs have been increasing for years. Still, many family docs only get paid about $40 for a patient visit.
The actual rates have been really stuck for a long time. If you think about that, I don't know if maybe people think of things in their lives like how much you pay for a haircut, how much you take when you take your pet to the vet, how much you pay when you go to the dentist.
I love being a family doctor, and there's really nothing else I ever wanted to do.
But after nearly 3 decades in family medicine, Dr. Fan Hoa Mung is closing her practice in Mississauga, Ontario. She says she never rushed through patients, but now she's overwhelmed with paperwork and can't afford to hire one registered nurse to save their practice.
In the past, it was just enough that we could sustain. And now, with inflation and with increasing administration, it's not sustainable. So I'm frustrated because I think that there should be room in the system for physicians like myself who are interested in the quality of what we provide. And it seems that we're being slowly edged out.
Dr. Mung says she's not sure where she's going to go next. Teaching is an option, but says knowing what the real world looks like for family doctors might make it tough for her to encourage students to open their own offices. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
A popular discount retailer has reported a security breach. Giant Tiger says contact information for some of its customers was compromised in an incident linked to a third-party vendor. Scott Peterson has more.
Giant Tiger clearly is in damage control mode here, saying that they've hired cybersecurity experts to come in and check the systems out. They're also reaching out to individual customers that they believe were affected by this security compromise, they're calling it. They're also putting the blame squarely on a third-party vendor that was compromised and not the systems within Giant Tiger itself. But nonetheless, they're saying that there's a variety of customers affected, and they're affected in different ways, starting with what we know from Giant Tiger this morning, that loyalty members and online customers may have had their names, their emails and their phone numbers compromised, and that may include anyone who subscribes to emails from Giant Tiger. Also, online customers may have had their addresses shared and compromised in addition to other information as well. And the company says that no payment information or passwords were part of this compromise, and the Giant Tiger itself says its own store systems and applications are not affected by this. And the company is trying to resolve the issue, they're saying, as quickly as possible, reaching out to individual customers and saying that they were first aware of this as soon as March the 4th. And this is not the first hack that Canadians have experienced. Over the last 2 years, it seems that hacking has been increasing. For example, Indigo Books and Music, the LCBO, the Nova Scotia government, the Toronto Public Library just recently, the City of Hamilton, Ontario, have all fallen victim to cyber attacks. And so, as always, Giant Tiger is warning its customers to stay diligent, to not accept any emails or phone calls that look like they might be suspicious, and of course, to change your password if you believe that you have been compromised. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
The NBA is investigating a Toronto Raptors player over gambling concerns. Power forward Jonte Porter is making headlines as betting scandals unfold in European soccer and Major League Baseball. The investigation reportedly centers on 2 games, one last week and one in January. Both times, online betting was unusually high that Porter's statistics would not meet odds makers' expectations. And both times, Porter left the game early. In one instance, he cited an injury, and in the other, he said he was ill. Citing personal reasons, the team placed Porter on its inactive list Saturday.
A 95-year-old Korean War veteran from Saskatchewan hit the slopes for the first time in 80 years. Harley Welsh is blind, but with a little help, he was able to sit ski, and CBC was there to capture it.
You're doing great. I was trying to concentrate on the yodeling so I wasn't scared.
What did it feel like?
A little bumpy, but yeah, it was great.
We have Harley and Mary, and both are residents at Sherbrooke Community Centre. Mary is 93 and is trumped by 2 years by Harley, who is 95. And they are here today skiing, and this is their first time in the sit ski.
Harley's a Perfect. Harley taught me how to yodel. I taught Harley how to sit ski, and it was a beautiful day. This blue skies, perfect conditions, and it was a great time.
It provides so much well-being for them. This is fun. This is, there's joy and anticipation. It's a lot of work to lead up to this, and so there's excitement about that. And then, as you're seeing today, they're scooting down the hill, and it's so much fun.
Like you said, you only live once.
Yep.
To see their smiles and to hear everyone cheer. One of the questions we always ask new skiers is, did you ever picture yourself doing this? And they embrace it.
It really does take a village to make this happen. And I don't know if we're going to get them off the hill because they just keep coming down the hill. So this is just a really wonderful day.
Well, I was trying to yodel, but it got a little squeaky sometimes. Sometimes it was close.
Sounds pretty good. Canada's main stock index was down almost 30 points today, while U.S. markets also moved into the red. Here's a look at how the markets did as we head to break. Yeah, getting a little soggy and gonna get soggier, I guess.
Maybe moldy by the end of it, right?
Yes, for sure. Now, again, I mentioned last night, we had a beautiful sunset on Sunday night. We actually had a nice sunset last night, not quite as beautiful widespread, but Sunday night we'll go back to the well for yet another pick from that one, which was so great. We do have some from last night as well, which we will also get to this week, because I don't think we're going to see a whole lot.
No, this is our only glimpse.
Yeah, exactly. Chester Basin.
Oh, wow.
That is, sky's on fire there, isn't it?
Spectacular.
So Grant had the right idea to get an even better pick. He sent the drone up.
I wondered how he was on a really tall ladder there, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thanks, Grant, so much for sharing this. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. And yeah, we will be needing some of these pictures from the archives over the next few days, given the setup over the next few. As you can see, clouds Lighter rain tomorrow and drizzle. That's going to be the name of the game. Those heavier rains are going to be further west across across New Brunswick. You can see temperatures ranging around 6 degrees for most of Cape Breton tomorrow. Mainland Nova Scotia looking set to range between around 6-7 degrees right in those onshore winds along the Atlantic coastline, but most of us will be in the 8 to 12 range. Milder on Thursday, a little more of a south to southwest flow. Temperatures kind of a widespread 10 to 14. Shorts.
Yeah.
You know you'll
For
see
some,
them on
for
Thursday.
Rubber boots, right?
Yeah, shorts and rubber boots. There's not a better combo here in the Maritimes in the spring. There is, again, that setup that will be really, you can see all those little pockets of yellow in there. Those are those heavier rains that are looking set to track through. Thursday night, Friday is really, I think, going to be kind of where we see the heaviest rain, but it will continue into Friday night, tapering off Saturday, but a kind of a widespread 50 millimeters looking set by that time, especially in the west.
At least it's mild. Okay, thanks, Ryan. More signs that spring is in the air. This is the scene at Olympic Park in Munich, where the cherry trees are in full blossom.
Yes, delighting visitors who flock to the park to take advantage of the beautiful weather. The Japanese cherry blossoms were a gift from the city of Sapporo back in 1972 to celebrate Munich's Olympics.
And the pink blooms are, of course, an iconic symbol of early spring.
No forecast on when we'll see them here, Ryan?
No, sir.
Soon. That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.